All right, so how's everybody doing? All right, so I'm making some updates on the website. If you haven't already done so, visit www.thctrust.org, and when you get there, you can log in if you want to follow along. Uh-oh. Well, yeah, here we go. And where we're going is we're going to under the basic topics menu, and then we're going to go to this basic discharge debt basic window here. So let me read what I have for you here. In the 1800s, the government of the United States began circulating debt notes to finance wars and respond to so-called panics, which was then the word used for what we call national emergencies now. On April 5th, 1933, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt issued an executive order under a so-called national emergency, removing the gold from circulation as currency. That's just a super brief summary. Everybody probably is familiar with HJR 192, Public Law 7310, the fact that there's no gold backing the money and all of that stuff. So I didn't want to spend a lot of time talking about that because it's not new information and you can go find that elsewhere. However, Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution requires that no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. This is where the whole commercial this is the foundational premise of the whole everything when it comes to being able to discharge debt or facilitate commerce without substance necessarily backing the currency. It all comes down to this uh, obligation of the federal government or obligation of the United States government or obligation of the Congress. Collectively, it is the lawmakers who must remedy this situation or who have remedied this situation because according to the governing document, the supreme governing document on the land in the United States of America, no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. That's basic, but I keep saying that because that has to be kind of the thinking and the drive behind your pursuit of a remedy. The following short readings will help you understand the mechanics of using commercial instruments under the United States monetary policy. Read this download here. So I have here, and if you're on a website, you can click this, and it is a zip file. It's a list of about 50 pages worth of writings that explain bills, bonds, notes, and how they work to facilitate commerce in this commercial system. So this is helpful if you want to learn how to finance and discharge debts and things like that. So this is a link. You can download these and read them here. I kind of have everything laid out in an order that I think it would be beneficial for you to better absorb everything. 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 are specific pages that I kind of suggested. So if you click here and you download 1 through 50, you could read it all. Actually, I haven't read all of it, but I have focused heavily on 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And I just haven't read all of it because I'm studying so much information. There's so much to read. You should read all of it. And by the way, when members of thctrust.org, if you come across some very potent information you want to share, you want me to post in here, let me know, and I'll make a determination after I review it. But don't just send me a whole bunch of stuff to review with no direct, with no direct brief or summary or what it is or the part specifically that you want me to look at. All right, so accepted for value. I put another PDF here. You can read about the whole, the basis for accepted for value, which is a banker's endorsement. It was taught at one time that you can do a banker's acceptance or an A4V on your debts to discharge them. There's partial truth to that, and but there's a whole lot that hasn't been told with that. And again, this is why we're going through these videos to get a more in-depth understanding. This is just kind of a basic video. So by the way, HJR 192 was repealed. So that's also Public Law 7310, the part that deals with the discharge dollar for dollar, which is 48 Stat 112, that was repealed. And there's really, I don't see any way around it, so you have to understand this. You know, I had to check myself on this before even being allowing myself to be, I don't want to say gullible, but everybody was teaching about discharging debt with HJR 192. They was teaching this in the 2000s and the 90s, but this has been repealed since 1977. So, you know, that's not to say that, you know, that's why I bring you back to the very beginning. No state shall coin anything but gold and silver for money, you know, because you still have to keep in the background that this is the reason why there's a lawful remedy in place. And that's what we're about to look at. So here, the following citations and authorities are provided to support you in your endeavors of facilitating commerce without substance backing the currency. Faith and credit. So the statutes are down here, but let me mention this real quick. Lawful money, my understanding. Lawful money is the money authorized by Congress, by the Congress of the United States, and providing it in commerce becomes an obligation. Okay, let me read that again. Lawful money is the money authorized by the Congress of the United States, and providing it in commerce becomes an obligation. What I meant by that is, because of the Constitution sets forth the requisites of money being gold and silver, I believe it said, then when you remove that from the contract trust agreement, you create an obligation, or it's like a bond, if you will. So when you remove it, when they passed some type of congressional legislation to remove the requirement for money, they had to put in an obligation. And it just, I mean, they had to put it, they took on an obligation. And that obligation would be facilitated in the form of a law passed by Congress. That's how Congress takes on obligations. They pass a law or a statute, and it's bonded and all these other types of things. Something like that. So what we're saying is, originally it was Public Law 7310, whatever. Now it's something else. And we're going to go look at some of those statutes. But what I was getting to was, Congress does what for the United States? They pass laws. The executive branch enforces the laws, right? So Congress, since they deal with laws, they provide lawful money. So the difference between money, gold and silver, and lawful money is the fact that lawful money isn't gold and silver, but is provided by Congress. And I believe that United States notes, you can look those up, what they are. They're not Federal Reserve notes, but United States notes is my understanding that those are lawful money. That's not saying that's the only type of lawful money, but those are lawful money because it was approved and passed by a statute of Congress. And United States notes, from my understanding, you will never really see one because they're used in between the Treasury and the Federal Reserve System. Nonetheless, just so you can understand these terms, I think it becomes important, because if you're doing this commerce stuff, you can't sell yourself short by saying there is no money. You have to understand there's lawful money, legal tender, currency, right? Federal Reserve notes, dollars. You just have to have a specific understanding of these terms when you use them. So let's see. Lawful money arises out of a constitutional right or a guarantee. So basically what I was getting at is that lawful money, again, becomes an obligation of Congress because they pass the laws, you know, they pass congressional statutes or whatever under their authority to so-called regulate commerce. You know, so in the monetary system, they remove the substance. Legal tender differs from lawful money. The Federal Reserve note is legal tender. Currency and United States coins are also legal tender. Currency includes notes, bills, bonds, and negotiable instruments. I'm not 100%, I'm not sure if currency includes bonds. I'm not sure if that includes bonds. But I know that includes notes, bills, and negotiable instruments. Maybe includes bonds, let's just say that. Federal Reserve notes that are legal tender may never fully satisfy a debt, but a note can set off the debt. One could redeem their currency into lawful money to discharge a debt, by tendering a negotiable instrument to a party entitled to enforce the instrument. The instructions ultimately would require the instrument and related public debt to be deposited to the Treasury and redeemed in lawful money, right? Because so since you can't pay a debt, you know, you can affect payment by depositing the debt and redeeming it in lawful money with the right statute. This is the idea of the discharge. This is the idea of the obligation. When you speak about a bond, you speak about someone's obligation. So we're talking about a congressional obligation as relates to money. All right. You have a constitutional right to access lawful money. Even more since the United States withdrew its consent to pay its domestic debt obligations in gold and silver. So the United States started, in honor, and then they withdrew their consent after they collected all the money from the people and then slowly changed the policy and then refused to ever pay it back to anybody, their heirs or whatever. They just withdrew their consent, So, public policy requires payment and legal tender. One must transact business in lawful money through legal tender. How do you transact business in lawful money to discharge a debt or to pay a debt through legal tender? Well, what I'm talking about is legal tender is currency, it's notes, negotiable instruments. So you negotiate the clause to redeem something in lawful money as part of your endorsement and payment instructions. So when you have those payment instructions on the back of legal tender or a note, you're using legal tender to access lawful money, if that makes sense. All right. Now here are some points of law to consider. Also, in most instances, I am only paraphrasing the citations below. So if you find anything interesting, make sure to look up the original text to get the full context of what is being stated. So again, I'm paraphrasing these. First is the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 8. No state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. So that's money, gold and silver coin. Lawful money is the congressional obligation to provide money. That's their lawful obligation. So you're asking for lawful money, not money, right? 31 U.S.C. subsection 5312. What is 31 U.S.C.? Let's look at that real quick. I forgot. Title 31 is what we want to see. What does Title 31 deal with? Money and finance, okay? So we're on track. Title 31 deals with money and finance. All right, we'll go back down to where we was. It was on 31 U.S.C. Definition of a financial institution includes a private banker, a travel agency, and an issuer of negotiable instruments. Okay, and also I believe within that definition is one who in any part makes a mortgage. So these are definitions of financial institutions. So this would be something, and private banker. Why is this important? Because a lot of people wonder about, well, can I write an instrument? Do I have the authority? Only banks can do whatever. Well, if you're a secured party and a private banker, then by the definition of the United States, that constitutes a financial institution. And you have to be a financial institution. I mean, you have to be able to write these instruments because you negotiate notes when you buy houses and things anyway, right? And you don't need any special license or certification. So you also have the UCC subsection 4-105. Actually, let me go back up and correct that. Usually when you're buying a house, you autograph the note. So you give property. What you should be doing is endorsing. You should be doing private banking. But people don't really do private banking. They just autograph the note. And then they give it over to someone else. But you still are a bank because you issue a mortgage. So still, it's another... so you're still a bank. Either way, whether you issue a mortgage or whether you tender a promissory note, you're a bank, all right? Or you're a financial institution. So UCC subsection 4-105 is the definition of a bank. So we already said you meet the requisites of a financial institution. Now the requisites of a bank means a person engaged in the business of banking. And a payer bank means a bank that's a drawee on a draft. All right, enough said. So can you issue negotiable instruments, notes, bills, bonds, and things? I guess if you're a financial institution in a bank, you can. especially if you're a secured party and you're operating as a trust, through a trust. 31 USC subsection 5103, currency, legal tender for debts publics and privates. I guess that's the definition of currency. 31 USC subsection 3123. And this is a good one. The faith of the United States government is pledged to pay in legal tender. I'm going to read that again. Does anybody know what that means? The faith of the United States government is pledged to pay in legal tender. This is telling you how the government's going to pay, if they are going to pay, whenever they do pay. To me, this means when you're in a private transaction, you're selling a debt, you're discharging something, whatever you're doing to facilitate commerce. When you negotiate, whatever you're negotiating to the Treasury, the debt, it will pay in legal tender. What is that? Means it'll pay in a note, some form of note. So if you give them a debt to deposit, they're probably gonna issue a note off of it some type of way, something like that, right? The faith of the United States government is pledged to pay in legal tender. The faith, right? The faith of the United States government. I was always told that faith and fiat are quite the same. 31 USC subsection 3124. Obligations of the United States government are exempt from taxation by state or political subdivision or state. 7 USC subsection 1928. The full faith and credit. This is the full faith and credit clause. It talks about that here. 7 USC 1928. A contract of insurance or guarantee executed by the Secretary under this chapter shall be an obligation supported by the full faith and credit of the United States. Let me read that one more time. A contract of insurance or guarantee executed by the Secretary under this chapter shall be an obligation supported by the full faith and credit of the United States. 31 U.S. Code subsection 3103. The Treasury may borrow on the credit of the United States. So once again, that says the Treasury may borrow on the credit of the United States. So if the Treasury borrows on the credit of the United States and it pledges to pay in legal tender, he says the faith of the United States government is pledged to pay in legal tender, and they borrow on the credit of the United States. 31 USC subsection 3111. New issue to redeem or refund outstanding obligations. I guess you gotta look that up. I don't know what I was going with that. 12 CFR 229.2, the ECFR. Availability of funds and collection of checks, regulation CC. 12 CFR subsection 210, ECFR. Collection of checks and other items by Federal Reserve banks through FedWire. This is something you want to pay attention to. I'll talk more about that when we get into more advanced information. 31 USC subsection 3342. This is important because remember 31 USC is under banking and finance. The dispersing official of the United States government. Who is the dispersing official of the United States government? That's what you should be asking yourself. It's my understanding, and I can't say this with 100% certainty, that most of the officers in your state, and especially those of the federal government, and they may not all know this. Sometimes you have to do digging to reveal to them things that they don't even know about their own office. It's how everything has just been set up before they got there. But I believe that these are all fiscal agents. They're not fiscal agents. Let me get this right here. What am I trying to say? What are they? Okay, the dispersing official of the United States government. Okay, so let me get that clear. They're not dispersing officials. But you got to know who dispersing officials are, who are fiscal agents, and even fiscal agents of your state, whether you're talking about your state treasury or the United States Treasury and dispersing officials. The dispersing official of the United States government may cash and negotiate negotiable instruments payable in United States currency or currency, exchange United States currency coins and negotiable instruments and currency coins and negotiable instruments for foreign countries. Basically, they're saying the dispersing official of the United States can do everything. And what I was trying to say earlier, I just didn't want to go too far off the path. But a lot of times when you're in the study of tendering bonds or negotiable instruments, you have to overstand the office of the agent that you're tendering it to. They may be a sheriff or a clerk of court, but in that capacity, the thing that allows them to receive instruments is their relationship as a fiscal officer or fiscal agent with the Treasury for that state or the Treasury of the United States. Because usually when you start digging in the government code or the Treasury regulations for your state, you're going to find out that you have to be a fiscal agent or have some type of certification to be able to receive monies or properties payable to the state of whatever or to the United States government. And this is important because this is where your enforcement comes in. When somebody's a fiscal agent or disbursement officer or financial officer, they have a whole lot of laws that apply to them when it comes to ledgers, accounting, and correct records. They don't have a lot of discretion, but they will exercise discretion if you don't have a higher understanding of jurisprudence. All right, so here's the good one. 50 U.S.C. subsection 4305B2 or 12 U.S.C. 95A2. Any payment, conveyance, transfer, assignment, or delivery of property or interest therein made to or for the account of the United States or as otherwise directed pursuant to this section, or any rule, regulation, instruction, or direction issued hereunder shall to the extent thereof be a full acquittance and discharge for all purposes of the obligation of the person making the same, and no person shall be held liable in any court for or in respect to anything done or admitted in good faith in connection with the administration of or in pursuance of and in reliance on this section or any rule, regulation, instruction, or direction issued hereunder. So they're saying not only is this for discharge and full acquittance, but anyone who undertakes the administration of this duty for you shall also be held harmless, basically. So it's powerful. 31 U.S. Code subsection 5118 prohibits requiring payments in any particular coin or currency. This is kind of like HJR 192, but it's not Public Law 7310. It's Public Law 97-258 of September 13, 1982. And this is where the government withdrew its consent to pay in gold and silver. And it also still continues to forbid requiring any particular coin or currency. And in 31 U.S.C. subsection 5118, which is also Public Law 97-258 of September 13, 1982, it lets us know that a public debt obligation is also a domestic debt obligation. All right. UCC section 3 UCC 3-310, effective instrument on obligation for which it is taken. I'm going to have to call them back. Effect of an instrument on an obligation which it is taken. Sorry, that was my phone going off. Unless otherwise agreed, if a certified check, cashier's check, or teller's check is taken for an obligation, the obligation is discharged. To the same extent, discharge would result if in an amount of money equal to the amount of the instrument were. Oh, wow. I don't even remember writing that. That's good. UCC 3-310, let's read again. Unless otherwise agreed, if a certified check, cashier's check, or teller's check is taken for an obligation, the obligation is discharged to the same extent discharge would result if an amount of money equal to the amount of the instrument were taken in payment of the obligation. UCC 3-409, acceptance of a draft or certified check. Acceptance means the drawee's signed agreement to pay as presented. It must be written on the draft and may consist of the drawee's signature alone. This is telling you about your banker's acceptance, right? So for me, my understanding is if you get, let's say, a coupon or whatever you're trying to do an acceptance on, all you got to do on the front of it is put acceptance. That completes the offer, turns it into a bona fide contract, right? That's the first part. Then you got to put an endorsement on the back. But we're not talking about that right now. Back to skip over this. Let's go here. Acceptance of a draft or certified check. Certified check. Certified check means a check accepted by the bank on which it is drawn. Acceptance may be made as stated in subsection A, or by a writing on the check which indicates the check is, or by a writing on the check which indicates that the check is certified. Oh, this is interesting. Hold on. Sorry, my phone's going off, folks. I'm trying to finish this up. All right. Okay, cool. That was my grand sheet. See, that's the next demonstration that I'm going to be showing Moore's is if you really want to drive with no license plates on your vehicle, I'm going to show you how to get there. Okay. All right. So let's go back to where we are. Where we at? 12 USC 411. That's the clause to redeem in lawful money. You're right? Federal Reserve notes to be issued at the discretion of the board of the Federal Reserve Bank. I ain't going to read this because this is a whole deep one right here. I'm going to skip over that because this is getting long. I thought I was going to get through this quicker than this. 110, I don't know how to say that. That's like I think that's a supreme, now I got to look incompetent in my own video. This is important. This is like federal. This is Supreme Court something, but I don't know how to read the citation, to be straight up honest with you. But the United States, but this is that high up there right there. Like the federal courts reference this. United States notes shall be lawful money. Oh, see, there they go. So I was correct. United States notes shall be lawful money. They're not, I don't think that's only lawful money, but they shall be lawful money. That's an obligation. And a legal tender in payment of all debts, public and private, within the United States. This is why under 12 USC 411, when we're negotiating our instruments, we may ask for redemption in lawful money, because we know that under the Constitution, right? That's why I said we always start with that Constitution. Gold and silver. No state shall make anything but gold and silver a tender in payment of debts. So from there, we take it all the way down to lawful money. United States notes shall be lawful money. Lawful money is the remedy for gold and silver. So you have to negotiate for lawful money, if that makes sense. It'll make sense when we get deeper into that stuff. And those videos are coming. I had to get all my reference material prepared. 31 USC subsection 5115. The amount of United States currency may not exceed $300 million and may not be held or used for a reserve. So this is why I was saying earlier, you got to know the difference in these terms. If I go post on Facebook, and I'm going to test this out, let me see, before I make this video. If I go post on Facebook, United States currency may not exceed $300 million, and I post this statute right here, 31 USC subsection 5115, how many people would be like, oh man, the United States has already exceeded that, it's $1 trillion, blah, 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 blah. But you have to pay attention. They ain't talking about Federal Reserve notes. They're saying United States currency. You know, the amount of United States currency. See, there's a difference in currency and United States currency. And it's my belief that United States currency is the lawful money. And it's used between the United States or the Treasury and the Federal Reserve System. But then when you get into legal tender, now you're talking about Federal Reserve notes and the deficit and all of that. And there's much more, so all of that must be hedged some kind of way against the lawful money. So it's important to note that you may never see lawful money, but if you're doing commerce in lawful money, then you're instructing some exchanges to be done between the Federal Reserve System and the Treasury on the account of the business that you're doing. 31 USC 391A, reimbursement of Federal Reserve banks. This is basically talking about how the Federal Reserve Bank can be reimbursed for business that they have to do as fiscal agents for you, basically, or whoever. 12 USC 392, depositories of government funds as confined to banks in the Federal Reserve System. Member banks as depositories. No public funds of the postal savings systems, whatever. You can read that. I thought that was the, where is it at? Did I skip over it? I thought I put it in here. Oh, here they are. I don't know if I said this. 12 USC subsection 391. Federal Reserve banks as government depositories and fiscal agents. Here's something important to note. Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, they're not Federal Reserve banks. They're not considered to be in the federal, they are connected to the Federal Reserve System, but they're consumer banks. So you have to understand sometimes when you're reading things under 12 USC that it deals with federal banks, they're probably talking about the Federal Reserve Bank of your district. And like for example, I'm in Los Angeles. The Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco is the Federal Reserve Bank for this district, and we have a Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco downtown in Los Angeles. So when you read these different banking codes, which are 12 USC, and money and finance code, which is under the 31 USC, you just understand who it applies to. A lot of this 31 USC applies to the Treasury as well as the Federal Reserve banking system. And here's Senate document 43, 73rd Congress, first session. Under the new law, money is issued to banks in return for government obligations, bills of exchange, drafts, notes, trades, etc. Anyway, that's enough about that, man. That was a pretty long read. That's just getting started because there's two other lessons that I got to go through. The next one is a more advanced level of discharging debts. And then we're going to go into, I might go into discharging mortgages, I don't know. But all the references to this stuff, I mean, you see these references right here on the screen. These are part of the free area of our website, thctrust.org. So you should go there, create a free account, log in, at least go to this discharging debt menu and copy this list. Scroll down, familiarize yourself with all of this. Anyway, peace. Hope y'all enjoyed it.